Hi guys, today is another video for Pathfinder Tuition Chemistry. So in today's chemistry video, we're going to look at one of the topics that can really be quite difficult for everyone to remember. Okay, but you always remember it for a different reason that you really hate this. You remember you hate this topic. So this topic is on qualitative analysis, and this is one of the topics that is very content heavy and mainly memory based. So at this point, what I want to do is that I want to share with you a few pointers of how to manage this topic better. So the first thing about basic on qualitative analysis is this. I would say that this topic will heavily rely on the formation of precipitate. Okay, so we need to see the thing happening. So when it's appearing, the one thing that must be kept in mind is that if it does appear, there's a color or no color, then we know that this is an insoluble substance. So all precipitates are basically considered to be insoluble substance. That's why you can see the color and you can see something appearing. Otherwise, if it's soluble, then the solution will be colorless. Okay, so the formation of PPT is one of the observations that we use to help us to identify what exactly are we looking at. Okay, the basic number 2 will be, if you talk about the forming of the identification of cation, okay, the positive ion, then you can remember by this that most of the result that we're going to see is reliance on the formation of precipitate. Okay, so quite seldom we do further tests, but mainly from the precipitate itself, we will be able to identify whether this substance exists. And the two testing agents that you need to remember, one will be sodium hydroxide, two will be aqueous ammonia. Okay, so we're going to use them to actually test whether the cation is present. Of course, further to that, the second level detail will be whether or not it can dissolve in excess and so on and so forth. Okay, so that is the second level. But basically, I would say that the main thing is to determine whether there's PPT, any color changes. On the other hand, when we look at anion, right, the way that we remember is that not only they look at precipitate, in additional for anion testing, we also look at this thing called a gas formation. So depending on what are the things that you are adding to the substance itself, it can also give you a hint of whether you are looking for that item. So for instance, when we talk about barium nitrate, if this is being added, okay, barium nitrate is being added, then we are actually looking out for this thing called the sulfate ion, right? Because barium sulfate is going to be formed and it's actually going to be a white precipitate, insoluble. Okay, on the other hand, when we talk about silver nitrate, if let's say silver nitrate is actually being used, all right, then that means to say you're looking for chloride ion. Reason is because that chloride ion is actually insoluble as well. So when you form silver chloride, you know that you are looking, you put silver nitrate, right? You know that you are actually looking for silver chloride, or rather chloride ion, because silver chloride will be a white PPT. And next, if you see in the question they talk about lime water, so you recall lime water is a test for carbon dioxide. So which also means to say that closest to that will be you should be looking at a carbonate ion, because carbonate ion will be able to produce CO2. Okay, so if there's a lime water test, you might be looking at carbonate. And the last one will be if you add aluminium and warm, just look at the entire question, see whether this is present. If this is present, then I can say very likely you're looking at nitrite ion. Okay, nitrate ion. Okay, so these are the very characteristic things that you add and what you're looking out for. Okay, so and of course, I would say that maybe by and large you might want to remember the odd one out, and you have a general view, then after that you look at the odd one out. So knowing that cation identification, you are mostly looking at precipitate, so maybe then after that you look at the odd one out. So what I'll do is that I'll classify the PPT into white one and colored one. Okay, white one and colored. The colored one is usually a little bit easier. Like for instance, when we talk about copper ion, okay, it's going to be blue. If you talk about iron 2 ion, it will be green. Iron 3 ion, the presence of it will be reddish brown. Then on the other hand, white, there's also a few. You have zinc, aluminium, lead, and calcium. But one of the things I always ask my students to remember is instead of remembering every one of them, just remember the odd one out. Like in this case, maybe look at zinc. Zinc is the one that I say, right, got two testing agents, the aqueous ammonia and the sodium hydroxide, but zinc is the only one that will be able to dissolve in excess in both testing agents. So I will remember that. Then the rest, I know that they will form white PPT, but they are not the one that will dissolve in excess. I'll remember that. So whenever a question wants me to sieve out that is zinc, I remember that this is the unique one that can dissolve in excess. Okay, tip number 2 will be try to remember and identify the one that you that is very unique one. So for instance, right, we know that if it's a lime water test, carbon dioxide. Okay, and in this case, you can see that there is really such thing. Mixed with lime water, then you get white precipitate F. So this one should be looking for carbon dioxide, and as a result, B is going to be a carbon dioxide gas. And the white PPT was a result of the lime water test when it turns chalky or milky. Then for the blue one, you remember just now I did say, blue one is basically the copper 2 ion. So this C should have something to do with copper 2 ion. And then last but not least, you look at the barium nitrate. Okay, barium nitrate means barium sulfate. So we are testing for sulfate ion. So the white PPT is actually barium sulfate. So if you look at the list that I gave you just now, you can use that to help you to quickly identify, even though you might not be able to identify every single thing, but you can eventually work backward to find out what exactly is the green solid. So this is actually tip number 2. Solve the obvious one first, especially the unique one, lime water test, carbon dioxide, and then you talk about maybe litmus paper red turn blue, that should be ammonia gas if it's a gas, so on and so forth, right? So there are some key characteristics as you go through the question. And of course, you cannot just rely on that 100%. Maybe tip number 3 will be, can you try to remember all the common reactions, like acid plus base gives you what? Acid plus carbonate gives you what? So this list is actually found in your topic of acid and bases, the common reactions. And you really need to take some effort to remember them, because when you look at the things that there's actually in the flow chart, what they ask you to do, you have to recall some of this reaction in order to relate what you might actually be doing in the question itself. Yeah, the only odd one out I think will be number 5. This one is not so commonly seen, not under acid and base, but in general, if carbonate plus heat, then you will get some oxide plus carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is the thermal decomposition process. But by and large, I think the first 4 is the one that you are expected to already remember. And of course, last but not least, tip number 4 will be this. Please remember that, okay, this is a very common mistake. A lot of people say that copper is blue, but what they really meant is the copper ion, when they form into copper hydroxide, that is blue. But however, copper itself as a metal is supposed to be brown in color, or in some cases maybe they say it's pink color, but brown, reddish brown color. So remember that there's always a difference between the solid itself and also the solution. So when you're doing a QA question, right, please remember to see whether are they referring to the solid itself, the metal, or are they referring to the hydroxide that's actually provided. Because this hydroxide is the one that identifies the ion itself, and this is the one that gives the blue color, not the metal itself. Okay, this is one of the many examples. Of course, you also got other examples. You can go down the list, but this is just a tips to help you to remind you that actually the actual thing itself might not be the same color as what you think it is. So whenever you go around and tell people that copper is blue color, copper is not blue color, copper is reddish brown. The ion, the hydroxides, okay, is actually the blue color. Okay, so that's all for QA. Right? I did not go through the details of it because those are readily available in textbook, notes, and so on and so forth. But I just want to highlight to you certain tips that you might want to take note, certain things that you might want to take note. So these are the useful tips that I think can better help you to go through your QA topic yourself. Okay, thank you very much. That will be the last part of the video. I will hope to see you in my next video. If you like the video, please please subscribe to my channel and like my video from there. Share around as well. Okay, thank you very much. I will see you again.